What is that thing called with the sound?
Audio?
No, that trend online where people eat stuff and.
Oh, AMSR?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, well, I guess we're on. I started recording there. So anyway, this is John. I was already started, and you're going on to ask that question. I'll just say, I'll see if I can answer it. Anyway, this is John from All Points TV, and we have in the studio today Adam Gerics, and we've been doing a series of basically beyond announcing for your candidacy for the prosecutor attorney's office as a write-in. We also examining quite a bit about what makes up our left-right paradigm politically in this country, and kind of poking holes in the conventionality that people have of those concepts of those terms. So let's go on from there, and we're going to bring up a lot of stuff. Probably going to infuriate some people, maybe cause some thoughts to be created. That'd be cool.
I really hope so.
Anyway, where do you want to start today?
I don't know, man. Like the first thing when you said that was what came to my mind was how it's always been funny to me that Flint is like a donut hole. Like we're like the Democrat hole and like a kind of conservative donut, like all around us, Fenton and Clio and Montrose. There's traditionally have always been like more white, more conservative. Like for example, when Hurley tried to pass one of their millages a couple of years ago, it was like all the people on the outskirts that didn't want to pay for the inner city cost that the millage would be as a cost on them. You know what I'm saying? Because it was a countywide millage for Hurley Hospital, but since there's so much trauma and so many black people go there and blah, 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 that was one of the theories as to why it failed is because, so it's just funny to me that we kind of are like this donut hole Democrat stronghold surrounded by a ring of more conservative and, liberty-oriented type people, even the black people that have eventually moved out there, as our history has progressed and people have been allowed to live wherever they want to. My mom's boyfriend's black, and he's very conservative and doesn't like anything that he sees going on right now in the current events. So that's the first thing that came to my mind is how we've always been, or at least, I don't know, since the 30s. Before that, probably not. I mean, we're like, I guess, like the epicenter of that portion of the human rights revolution. Unions and then free housing. You know what I'm saying? So.
Right.
I don't know. See, that's what came to my mind. We're a Democrat stronghold right here in Flint, downtown Flint. Can't break that barrier. We already got the wall, Trump.
I always bring the point up though that the UAW members are largely voting for Democrats because the union instructed them to do it because they saw a common thread that they had this perception at least that the Democrats looked out for their interests more as working class people. Supposedly, but whenever you saw. I think you can see every time the GM got a good contract with the UAW, for the UAW, I mean, it was good because more money coming in, more benefits. There's almost kind of a slight increase in taxation for the Democrats, basically, because now we can milk these people for more. Right. So I don't know if they were ever on your side or not, people, and you allowed it to go for 60 years or better, so that's on you.
Yeah. But it's unfortunate. I think that the early days of the union had some very, important issues that they conquered, but they very quickly, like anything else, just got co-opted, and mostly by the Democrats. But they're really good at pretending to not be who they are. So that's like the ongoing thing that's been going on in my mind. Our conversations, conversations with other people as things become more and more clear to people with what's going on with this, Democrat backed craziness right now. It's become more clear. And, I guess you could thank the internet, too, because people like me or, more famous people or people like you that have pointed these things out for years are now not so crazy. You know what I'm saying? Everybody wants to point the finger at Alex Jones or, somebody like that or Ben Shapiro or whatever. But the fact is they're right. And a lot of us have known a lot of that crap for a really long time. And don't get me wrong, I don't agree with everything they have to say. But, for instance, the fact that the Democrats were the Dixiecrats. The fact that they were the ones not involved in any shape, form, or fashion of abolition or freeing the slaves. It was the Republican Party. It was this right wing that they keep trying to paint all of us as alt-right, or whatever. And I don't really identify with both, but I see what you're saying, and what I just said is that they've never really represented anybody, but they've always been really good at pretending to.
Yeah, because Rush Limbaugh, when I was still watching him, he had the TV show. This is back in the 90s. I remember one time he showed a clip of a guy who was running for governor of California, it's Jerry Brown, And he was governor in the 70s sometime.
Oh, yeah.
And then came back.
Dead Kennedys did that song, California Uber Alles. I am Governor Jerry Brown. My aura smiles and never frowns. Soon I will be president. Oh, sorry.
Well, in the 90s, he came out with he was doing the speech and he had these ribbons on his lapel. And he goes, oh, you might be wondering what these ribbons represent. And this one's for this one's for that. Well, when they came back from playing the clip, it was really cool how they orchestrated. I guess they just gave him another coat that, Rush. When he came back on the camera, he had this one that was just festooned with ribbons. And he goes, see this? I care more than you do about everything. I'm more compassionate. And you're unfeeling. And it's like, I hated to admit the point because, Rush had said things that there are some things I agreed with. There are some things I seriously disagree with. He lost me when he said, those liberals want you to believe you're only 1 or 2 paychecks away from poverty. Yeah, guess what, Rush? The rest of us are not paid millions of dollars for being a talking head. 1 or 2 paychecks is crucial to our existence, all right? Mortgages don't stop when you lose your job, all right? So, he was out of touch with the working class. He really was. Yeah. But the left, I've never seen where they represented my interest at all. They wanted to demonize me, even when I was a kid. In elementary school, I had teachers there who basically wanted to dump guilt on because I was a white male. Okay, and it's like I was like 9, 10 years old, and I'm supposed to just embrace this guilt because some overly educated person who just got through being indoctrinated 4 years in an educational institution, and if they're males, they're probably only there to avoid the draft, so they can get their what they call deferment. So why am I supposed to hate myself for being white? Okay, now they can say, well, historically this, the black whites did this, whites did that. And I looked at it and I went, well, let's face it. And this includes my own grandfather. My dad's mom was a, what do they call them, socialist Democrats or Democrat socialist? Like they claim that Bernie Sanders labels himself as.
Right.
And I'm like, and he was a Hungarian immigrant. His family's from Hungary. He was born here, but his family was just, as soon as they got here, they basically had him and his siblings, right?
Anchor baby. And
basically, well, they already got their citizenship. No. They already got their citizenship. They couldn't swim the Atlantic Ocean and just sneak in here and creep in. They were on the radar from the onset. They were processed in Ellis Island and stuff like that.
But that's terrible too, what people went through. But yeah,
it was terrible. Yeah, but the thing is, another thing. But that's another point I can go on that too. But anyway, so I said to him, why would you back a party though that had the Klan? Right over here in Dakota, because we're in the neighborhood on the east side here in Flint where the studio is at. So a couple of blocks over, my mom was born in a house right there. And born actually in a house, she was born in the back bedroom of this house.
Not at St. Joe's, not at Hurley, not at
Right. Anyway, in that house, her grandparents had lived. It was my grandparents and my great-grandparents lived together. My grandfather lived with his in-laws, basically, right? So they had a kid there. My mom was the firstborn of that family. But in that house, just a few blocks from where we were on the studio, the KKK surrounded it, burnt crosses on their lawn. So my grandfather's now working the factories amongst these people who belong to the Klan, and now because of the union relationship, he's connected to that same party. I always thought that was bizarre that he had such a strong loyalty to people who basically wished death upon him just about 20 years before that. Well, they never really changed.
Trauma conditioning.
Right.
Before they came up with it as a policy or, something they use.
Yes,
it's a strong man's handbook thing, but that also goes back to that shit I was talking about with the Black Legion under Mott, or how Ford would send people to people's homes to make sure they were speaking English and not drinking alcohol and, total Gestapo shit on these immigrants. Do you ever see that thing that Ford would do where he'd bring the immigrants through that were like new recruits for the factories or whatever, but also new immigrants, and they just got their citizenship right, so they'd have a derby, a giant like derby, a hat, but it was a giant one on stage, and they'd go up the back steps visibly so people could see them, like in their lederhosen or some sort of like traditional old world clothing, and they'd come out the front like in a suit and tie, like the modern American man. So it was a total washing of ethnic heritage. You know what I'm saying? Like literally, right? There was like ceremony of rejection and becoming. And I get it. They're like, oh, we're Americans, but at the same time, being taught to hate yourself, being taught to not want to acknowledge where you came from, and then being brought into this thing that when you step back and look at it, you go, why the hell would you want to join that? I get it. They needed jobs, and my great-grandpa was a Hungarian immigrant in the 30s. He became a pipe fitter. He was there through the sit-down strikes and all that. So, and they spoke fluent Hungarian. I don't speak it, so that was a part of it. Was that they were not a lot of those workers back then were not even allowed to speak their language at the factory. And then, like I said, with Ford, they'd go to their homes and make sure that they were learning English. Send agents there to do it, you know.
So I don't think that happened here at the General Motors plants when they did that. I don't think they did that here.
No, they had the Black Legion through Mott. They would just go
really?
burn your garage down.
Wow.
If they knew you were organizing or beat you. I mean, that's what people don't realize is like, I remember the Red Berets, the women as part of the sit-down strikes. They call
I heard about them.
Red Beret Brigade or whatever. They would take, I told you this before, they would take 2x4s and carve them down so they'd have a handle like a little club so they could help protect their men from these union busters and brutalizations that they would experience in or out of the shop. They would literally march around Carriagetown and around those two neighborhoods on either side of the old Chevy in the Hole there, with their red berets on and their fucking clubs, you know, to protect against that kind of brutality. So I get what you're saying. It's like, why would you want to be a part of this thing, you know, that's inherently hates you and wants to destroy you, but out of need mostly, you know?
Right.
And so that's where people like black people and white people, immigrants like we're talking about, have kind of succumbed to this idea, this twisting of their origin, I guess, in the 30s. That's what I think where it really happened. But and they've come to represent the so-called working class, but the vast majority of them have nothing to do with the working class whatsoever. Not when you're on an airplane with Epstein, you know, going to freaking some Caribbean island, and you know your buddies with freaking super rich, you know, millionaires that don't give a shit about the working people either. But somehow you're the working class party, you know. And this is the accusation they make on Republicans and the right wing all the time.
Right.
And I get it because of what you said. They, for as much rich history as they do have in the early days, they did also acquire this kind of like white man's party, richer type people, the top hat type guys, you know, from the turn of the century that just was pervasive forever. And I'm sure the Democrats helped keep that going. I'm sure their own behavior, like you said, also demonstrated their lack of connection, you know, in that sense. But I think that that's coming around, you know. But that's where I also, like I said before, like you, I like what Ben Shapiro has to say. A lot of what he has, most of it makes sense. I don't agree with the Israel thing. And I do think that he's slightly disconnected from the so-called working class because he is an affluent Jew who's had money and resources that a lot of other people wouldn't have. So it's easy to sit on your pedestal and look down and go, okay, this, and this. Well, logic is one thing, and that makes sense. I get that. But to have this high and mighty attitude at the same time, that's where people shy away from the Republican Party. But I think, again, it's coming back around. You know, with what's going on now, people starting to see that the Democrats are, you know, not what they've always claimed to be, and they always constantly play the race card with people, and on both sides of the equation, white or black, you know, and with all this crazy shit going on with Antifa and Black Lives Matter, and them refusing to denounce it or any of the actions of the violent protesters, and this constant attempt to do, you know, what I just said is to put this. Everybody's alt-right. If you're right-wing or conservative, you're alt-right. You must be a supremacist. You must be a Nazi.
Right.
And that's not the case.
No, that's not.
Not at all. I know we got videos, and maybe I'm talking over too much or anything, but I know we got videos we're going to get to in a second. But that's what I'm saying is, like, I think people are finally starting to see that. Maybe not necessarily through Trump. I think more through the availability of information on the internet. You know, because 20 years ago or so, or 30 years ago, if you said, you know, Democrats were Dixiecrats, unless you had a reference book and an encyclopedia and something to cite right in their face, you know, nobody wanted to listen to you. But now you can go, oh yeah, it's true, and here's the actual information, not some Snopes run by a whore freaking, you know, website that's gonna, you know, try to create some kind of narrative, but an actual citation of the actions and activities of these people, you know, back in history. You can show people that now, and it's available now, you know, so people, I think, are starting to see this a little bit more clearly. The right is capitalizing on it, which is good, because I think that they need to come back to being part in relation to the working class and stop being so high and mighty, because much of what they say is true. And for me to say that, I'm sure a lot of people think it's freaking crazy because I've always been perceived as more left-wing. But in fact, I've kind of decided I'm more pro-life than I ever used to be. You know, that's kind of a new revelation for me. You know, the left wing, that victimization thing, it can be very convincing. You know, to a horrible fault, And then you start to lose the logic of the situation sometimes. That's kind of how I see it coming from the Democrats and the so-called left wing now, It's back in the 80s and 90s, the activism I did was all about human rights. We didn't expect anything. We didn't have our hand out for anything. We raised our own money, When we got arrested, it wasn't for violence. It was to make a point to get in the news. That was it. But we didn't blow something up or burn something down. And if we did burn something, it was an effigy, not a car or somebody's house or a fence or a dumpster. And we didn't do all that. We were trying to get AIDS drugs developed faster, recognition that it was not just a freaking gay disease. I'm straight. My girlfriend and I were like the two of very few straight people in the whole organization on the West Coast in San Francisco. So to us, it was about tactic. This has got to be in the paradigm. It's got to be in the public debate. Otherwise, it's just not going to get anywhere. You know what I'm saying? That was our perspective. We didn't want to destroy the system and ruin people's lives and things. And we I forget who it was in '92. Who was running in '92? It was Bush and Clinton.
Bush, yeah.
Okay, Bush was at the Hyatt across from Union Square Park, downtown San Francisco. Of course, ACT UP's, we got to go because it's San Francisco and all the political whatever is going. Doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're on. Greenpeace is there, Queer Nation is there, Earth First is there. There's all these conservative groups that are there, and but it was in Union Square Park, so it was in this literally a block-shaped park, one city block-shaped park across from this fancy hotel. So what we did was to guarantee headline. We rented a room inside so that they had access to the speech that Bush was putting on. They were at the dinner, right, and everything, an infiltration, if you will. Meanwhile, we had a cell outside that would go to the front line and hold up the banner and dominate the immediate view of the press. Fuck Greenpeace, fuck Earth First, they're all behind us. We made it look like it was our crowd, the whole thing. We strategically placed people across the entire barrier. And then our people inside disrupted the event and whipped out a banner, subsequently got kicked out. They didn't get arrested. So then they're doing this ballet with the cops out front with their banners, trying to keep them open for the newspapers or whatever, because the cops kept trying to take them and whatever. But they weren't going to arrest them for trespassing or anything because they had tickets they could be there. You know what I'm saying? So they were just trying to get them out. But there's hundreds of people in this block across the street behind a barricade, and everybody, including us, was getting excited about what was going on. But then again, strategically, my girlfriend, who had been in the hotel and conducted that part of it, she looked at me at the barrier and said, "We need to keep this going. Come over the barricade." So we didn't attack the police. We didn't hurt them. We had bags of red paint that we were saying was HIV-tainted blood. And they tried to say that we were throwing blood at them or whatever, but we didn't do any of that. We just went over the barrier and let the media do the rest. And what did it do? It put AIDS as the prominent story, in local and national news as far as San Francisco and Bush speaking in San Francisco goes. That's it. We weren't trying to hurt anybody. We weren't trying to terrorize anybody. We weren't trying to shout anybody down or burn a dumpster or a car or, anything like that. So it's, to me, I don't know how much more obvious it could be. That's exactly what they're doing. How many cities? It's like 44 cities or something. Austin's all shut down and shit's burned everywhere. People are getting shot. How is this not insurrected type of shit? I just don't get it. Why isn't it already being called a civil conflict? Because it is. It is. So, and this is backed by the Democrats mostly.
Yeah, and they think, the Democrats and the Democratic people, the people who could call themselves Democrats, I think are, how can I say, they're split-minded, because in the 60s, they were against the war, but Kent State happened to Ohio. I think it was a Democratic governor at the time called out the National Guard at Kent State that started the shooting, and they turned around and they blamed the entire incident on Richard Nixon. Okay, another thing is, too, there was a documentary my friend used to have to show in a class because he was a sub, and it was a political science class, and it was done by CBS, I think it was CBS. They had this documentary about the Vietnam War. They called it the Mr. Nixon's War.
I think I've seen that, yeah.
Okay, to put the facts straight, the first visors going into Indochina or Vietnam, because it was once a French fight, basically, it had been a French colony, started under Eisenhower, but he didn't send troops. Eisenhower was a Republican, but he sent advisors. Kennedy, which is a couple years later, trails it because he got elected after Eisenhower. He sent troops and some more advisors. It was Johnson, after the assassination of Kennedy, that increased troop involvement dramatically.
Right.
Okay? But now it's still considered Mr. Nixon's war. Now, he did inherit it, so maybe that's what they're saying, but they don't clarify that in that title.
Right.
They don't say the inheritance that was left to Mr. Nixon. Nothing. And everybody does. I mean, any president, and Obama did this repeatedly.
Yeah.
When he inherited a mess from the financial meltdown of 2000s, he turned around and said, I inherited a mess. Every president inherited some kind of mess from their predecessor. He's not unique.
No, it doesn't
My dad
happen.
would say, don't feel pregnant there, Obama. You know, it's like don't feel alone. That happens with everybody. That's part of the territory of being the president.
Yeah, that's always cracked me up.
I mean, it's like, so I mean, and I just like, and I am very personally conservative because I just basically don't have the energy to try to live this astonishingly rebellious lifestyle that's going to point my way of being such a great person or such an interesting person. I just don't have that interest. I can't sustain that interest in trying to get that kind of attention.
Why, you don't want to control people?
No, not at all. Because it's just too exhausting.
I know, right?
It's too exhausting.
I think I learned that with my baby mama, or maybe the girlfriend before her. You just can't control people.
It just sucks.
Unless they want you to. And then
but that's the reason why I'm glad I don't have kids, because, I mean, if they were screwing up, I'd have the urge to try to change them, or try to alter their behavior, or try to do what I would think is right. You can't do that.
Well, hopefully and ideally, you would have had good enough influence that wouldn't be so much of a worry, you know. But
they think.
But that's part of the problem with what's going on. Like I was telling you, you know, this nuclear family destruction thing about them. They want to destroy the patriarchy, and it says right in their literature that they want to basically remove the father from the family unit completely, and then make everything communal. And it's like, I don't know. So we're in that like everybody gets an award thing. That's what they want, is everybody to be autistic, and everybody gets an award. Everybody wins. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody gets a little stupid statue put on their dresser, because there's not first place, there's not second place. It's everybody gets the same thing, you know. Like,
see, that sounds like my God, Adam. I mean, a few years ago I met you. You were involved in the Occupy Wall Street organization group down here in Flint.
Yeah.
And I sat down and talked to him. I am a capitalist. Okay, I mean, boo hiss, boo hiss. I don't like the abuses going on, like like Wall Street corporations can get away with, the ones that are traded on Wall Street.
Well, yeah,
but that can't happen unless they have a close relationship and a close payoff to a bunch of politicians, allowing them to, should I say, socialize when they lose money, but when they can make money, it's all theirs.
Yeah.
But when they make a loss, we're supposed to pick up the tab for them. I've actually, be unpopular to say this, I wanted GM not to be bailed out. I wanted to bolster the pension funds so the workers wouldn't be put in a lurch. And then I would have said, let's have a big garage sale and sell off GM.
hell yeah.
I mean, because that's more consistent with their idea of free enterprise.
Wouldn't that? I think that was one of what's that dude's name again? Oh, Crowder. Ladder with Crowder.
Right.
He just did this. I just watched this. Maybe it's old. I don't know. I've been trying to catch up because I've been so isolated lately. But I watched one recently where he said he finally agreed with Tesla. But that was kind of part of his, like, the crux of his whole thing, is that, like, there's all these subsidies. Remember how I bitched about the farmers wanting to bitch about inner city people getting welfare, yet it's basically a welfare system because they're getting subsidies too. They're just getting a lot more of it because they're producers of food and da. Same thing with GM or Tesla. See, those corporations got a bunch of those subsidies too, but they're not doing what Tesla's done. You know, Tesla is a subsidy-based company.
Right.
Money that came from us. And he where the other corporations apparently have not done as much development and research into electric cars and all that high-tech stuff, he has. And that's why he's the cutting leading edge. I totally agree. Bye-bye GM. Bye-bye fucking Dodger. I forget who they are now because they've all conglomerated so many times. But, bye-bye. Just go away. That's the last century. We need to move into the next century. And if we have people like Tesla that are innovators that are actually going to use that money to do what its purpose is and be successful, because he is,
So he agreed with Elon Musk.
Yeah. Before he was kind of opposed to him apparently, but they went on a ride in a Tesla and he talked about that stuff specifically, And so it's exactly what you're saying. They should have, in 2008, they should have just disappeared. Like you said, garage sale. You know.
Because I mean,
oh, and by the way, you also need to pick up the tab for cleaning up the fucking mess you left behind here. You know what I'm saying?
that's right. I mean, it's like I'm a person who likes free market, and it's
Absolutely.
like don't expend yourself because how they did expand themselves, quite frankly, is they got a lot of boost of money coming in during the different wars we were in. They were, let's face it, they had the lion's share of production for our army and our country and all the other countries around the globe. Of course, we all paid for it because nobody else paid back the money we gave them during the Second World War, except for the exception of Finland. They paid us back. But the rest of the country, the England, France, Germany, okay, they're right. Russia never gave us money back.
Right.
They just laughed at us when it was brought up. Like, okay, yeah, right, capitalist. No, no.
Right. Well, and I'm sure our population losses helped their overhead too. So.
Well, look at the plague. The plague made things better for people who survived it because now they can demand more wages from those who had money
Well, and there's
if they
more
wanted a job
resources
done.
available too.
Right.
There's less people. There's
So
more
guess-
money.
They become more valuable.
Right.
That's essentially it. It took that to people to see other people being valuable. That's a sad commentary on human condition.
Right.
It really is.
Right.
They can't, to take something as catastrophic as a plague, which it took, what, 3/4 of Europe's population at different points.
Right.
But they took that for them to realize, maybe that serf and that peasant that we used to spit on, they used to, harvest their crops and grow the crops. So maybe they got some use.
Yeah. Well, I guess.
But see,
Same thing with World War II and World War I, though.
Oh, yeah.
That's why we had little short booms afterwards because they're so profitable to lose people.
well, it's like this girl was astonishing. She was
we're
in
19
college.
years in Afghanistan, by the way. Too.
What'd you say?
And we're still we're like 19, 20 years into Afghanistan still, by the way. And those losses are probably helping their overhead too. So.
But the thing is,
Not helping us because we have to help these poor vets that get blown up and shit.
right?
But,
They come back here, and then you have people whining about, well, they shouldn't give. I had a guy on a libertarian site attack me, and I'm a libertarian. But I mean, you made a contract with these people. Our country did. Our government did. When they come back, they are in bad shape. They should have their needs met.
Without
And he
a
took
doubt,
it-
but we have a history of not doing that too.
That's right. But he took me a ticket, and this is a libertarian. Well, I tell you, I don't think we should be in all the number of wars we've been in, but we are in them. And the people took a contract with us, with our country, with our government. And how are we going to back away from that?
Now, okay,
We can't.
with what's going on with today, do you think that the vast majority of people that actually joined the military had it in their mind that they were going to go out and be a imperialist Nazi, whatever they're trying to call people now? Most people I know that joined, it was a choice of either getting a shitty job or going into the Army or Marine Corps. Maybe some of them came from a military family, but for the most part, it was kind of a job choice.
Right.
And like you said, we made a contract with these people. They did their job. They deserve their benefit. But that's always been, what was that revolt way back when they all camped outside in D.C.? It was...
The
after the
benefits. The benefits.
Civil War.
Civil War.
Was it
the
Civil
First
War?
War? The one I'm thinking about was like after the First World War, the
Oh, yeah,
veterans
and
were
they
promised.
came in with flamethrowers and burned the tents down.
Yeah, the tents
kicked them
down
out.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that. This is like the benefits. They were demanding the benefits they're promised a little early because it was the Depression, and
But so what?
yeah. But the thing is, politicians
Right.
can make all the money they want. If they don't make enough, they can pass themselves a pay raise.
Right.
But when you make a promise to somebody, you can't accelerate the timetable or time frame in which you want to pay that back because that's overly demanding. Well, these guys actually did something for what they are getting benefit from. What the hell did you do?
Right. Well,
Got elected.
and they're done. They're back. They're done.
Right.
The job is over. What do they have to wait? What? That doesn't make any sense at all.
And that was a Republican behind that. I think it was a Hoover. I
Yeah.
think it was like he was the one that called it was MacArthur.
Yeah.
They actually went there with his men to shoot and kill these people, use a flamethrower in their tents, on their encampment. So that's right there that shows a black eye. I'm willing to admit the Republicans, and I'm not a Republican. I'm not registered in the party, but I think the Republicans overall have a whole hell of a lot of us to be embarrassed by than the Democratic Party.
Oh, absolutely. Well, everybody forgets, you've heard me say it before, but the Republican Party was started in Michigan. It was supposed to be in like a little house or cabin, but it was so great of a turnout that they couldn't just have it in this little building, so it ended up being an outdoor event because so many people had arrived to. And, like I said earlier, our contribution to abolition and freeing the slaves and Republicans being like a kind of a gateway in Michigan into Canada. There's stories I'm sure people have heard or seen. I think there's a movie or a TV show about how, or maybe even a documentary about how even in Flint, and areas around here or near here, the slave catchers would come up into Michigan, and we'd run them out. One of them was hung. He came to capture these people, and the people around said, "No, it's not happening." And then he tried to be violent about it. This is just quick synopsis. He tried to be violent about it or whatever, and they strung his ass up. And there's many stories like that. But that was in a primarily red state. That's more for the common man than any Democrat I've ever heard. And again, like we both acknowledge and we all know, they were the Dixiecrats. They were the ones that owned slaves, and then when they couldn't anymore, they had to reinvent themselves.
Right.
And then terrorize everybody with their Klan, in the interim.
But see, the thing is, I've always heard too, the left has a tendency to idealize Europe. And they're looking at mostly post-World War II Europe. And they say, well, Europe, they have socialized healthcare. In Europe, they have this, all these things they have bike trails. And I like bike trails. I love bike trails. I like the idea. I think you could do them with privately raised cash. I don't think we should take money from our DOT operating budget or anything else to make, I don't like the bike trails they got out, that little strip there with the paint line. And I don't think those are adequate.
I don't know if I like them at all anyway.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I like them at all anyway. I think it's more of an obstruction on the environment.
I do too.
But bike trails. Why not just have a trail?
I like the bike trails we got through here, but that's beside the point. But right. What I'm saying
to me, it's just asphalt that's going to have to be replaced.
Right.
It costs money. Stupid. If you're in town, you need sidewalks, and especially for people that are disabled or whatever. But overall, it's not. That's a whole other discussion. I don't like that. I don't like that kind of intrusion into nature. We've already done so much of it. And there's so much garbage everywhere.
Well, I think you got a point there. I didn't even think about that, but because. I think the bike trails are good, the one we have, but I can see your point that they are going to be repaired at some point.
It's like those stupid exercise things like I talked about last time where Heartland Manor used to be across from Atwood Stadium.
Right.
We remember, I guess, during the urban renewal, that was something that they did in towns where they'd put freaking little exercise signs and a little bench right there and had a little diagram of how to exercise. Come on, man. Is it made out of freaking like kryptonite or something? It's going to rot. We're going to have to pay for it. There's a fucking 2x4 or 4x4 on a stupid plaque. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're gonna install something like that, then make it of quality that we never have to pay for again. Otherwise, it's an obtrusive thing that we have to pay money on to maintain. It's stupid.
Would you see these things, the different plaques that they have? They're like basically like a thing comes up maybe 3.5, 4 feet up in the ground, and it's like slanted, and they got like a history, and they have pictures of it.
Sure.
2 or 3 of them I know of have been really seriously damaged and vandalized.
Oh, the one in Chevy in the Hole by Kettering.
Yeah.
It was vandalized like 4 years ago, and I don't think they've ever cleaned it up or fixed it.
So,
and I thought that was kind of weird being that one.
Right.
Because Kettering's there and Chevy in the Hole's
it should be pretty heavily patrolled by just people passing by.
It's almost like a weird frat thing or something where they kind of like are victorious over the, working class. Because Tom Ayers told me, they bought me out from Carriagetown, when they put the Jimmy Johns in and came through and cleaned up University Avenue. He said, first of all, everybody in Carriagetown slandered me. Oh, he's crazy, he's violent, he's aggressive, he's this, he's that, blah, 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 blah. He was like, they tried to steer him so hard not to talk to me. Which is like crazy because it was my property that he wanted to buy. So what was he going to do, have me shot? That's what he said. He was like, you guys in this neighborhood, like, paint this picture, and then I go out and have lunch with you and have fish and chips at that place off Miller Road. And he's like, you're the most amicable of all these freaks in Carriagetown. He's like, this is nothing like what they told me to expect. You are, blah, blah. I'm not tooting my own horn, but he's like, you're a pretty normal, average guy with, we don't know where he didn't get where it came from. It was because I was, rebellious in Carriagetown, even against them, because they were a bunch of Democrats that wanted to soak up money. And that's actually a pretty racist story I'd like to get into in the future, too, because there's a guy, Larry Miller, that owns a piece of property right on the Flint River across from the hotel downtown. It's a very significant spot, and he's getting on in age, and that neighborhood is notorious for bullying people out of it that are not in their little cadre, not in their little gay agenda cadre in that neighborhood.
See, my dad's family is a long-time residents of Flint. Matter of fact, I would dare say that they are kind of very strong, thick fabric, of thread in the fabric of Flint. And I've always felt like the outsider here because I'm not a Democrat. My dad didn't belong to EW. He wasn't a union member. He wasn't a Democratic Party member. So I always felt out of place. And we were working class. My dad worked harder and got paid a hell of a lot less than factory workers did. My dad was a postal worker. He was a mail handler. Not glamorous. He did
essential, but
essential,
paid,
right?
Paid like shit. Yeah, right.
Sounds like stuff like that. And I never felt. I mean, and I'd get around these snobs who've just moved in the past few years in the Flint area, and they want to be up and cross. So they're like, I would say maybe they're computer people or they're more politically inclined towards the Democratic Party. I look around here and I'm like, why would I want to back a party to put us into the condition we're in now?
Well,
that doesn't make sense.
Because then they can get rid of you and bulldoze your house and put something pretty up there that they like.
Yeah, that's about exactly it.
But see, that's goes into other race issues that we're kind of touching on with all this stuff, because that's gentrification.
Right.
That's gentrification. A whole neighborhood of Poles or Hungarians are kind of pushed out, and that's not gentrification.
But that happened in Detroit. I remember that.
But that's not gentrification like what happened in Chicago with that big apartment building that everybody made a big. That's the most current one that I can refer to. But you know what I mean? Like, how is it? It's not just a black thing.
No,
it's not at all. You know, this is a class thing. It's a money thing.
Well, those white Democrats in here are really, really well heeled, very, very well financed, and arrogant as hell.
And they mostly live outside of Flint.
Yeah. and they'll come here and they'll say, I go to Blackstone's. Yeah. I've been to Blackstone 4 or 5 times.
Or what's the other one? The White Horse.
Oh, the White Horse.
The classic. You know?
Yeah. See, I'm a torch person myself. When I do go out with my friends, that's where I'm going to go to. But, I mean, that's a mix.
I used to like too, but when that one guy with the crew cut bought it or whatever, he used to try to cruise me in Carriage Town. I couldn't handle it, being in there. You know, I was friendly with him. I'd go there, have beers when I wrote for the Uncommon Sense. But you know what I'm talking about? That guy with the glasses. And the
see, I don't know the owner of it. Is it the owner of it, you're saying?
Well, he bought it, I think, in... like 2009, 10, maybe it was a little earlier. I don't remember. He used to own a house on 4th Avenue that I'm pretty sure this other guy, ex-Flint cop Gary Hartley, bought and made even nicer. It's like got a 3rd floor with a freaking hot tub. But I think he sold that and then he moved on out of Carriage Town because he kind of got fed up with Carriage Town too. Even though he was gay, he was still not in their clique. So he got harassed as much as anybody else. But he ended up, I think, buying the torch. I think he finally did sell it to somebody else, but I think
there's 2 owners now. Though, from my understanding, there's 2 owners.
Well, if there's one of them's like kind of blonde I remember him always with a crew cut and glasses. I don't remember his name, but it was him and I think his lover that bought the torch. So it kind of changed for me, you know, because I grew up there and it was a different scene, and it didn't change that much, but. It's just weird that I knew the owner now in a different way than I didn't know the owner of the torch before. I was just a patron, but it's a little bit more intimate that way, and I didn't like it as much.
I'll tell you what,
we'll make a transition. That and a bunch of my friends that were on the
wall
were gone.
Yeah,
it was all these other people. I was like, oh, what happened?
I used to know 2 or 3 of the regulars.
Mono Breckenridge, who used to run the Buckham Alley Theater before they got rid of that, was up there, and all these people from back.
Well, you go way back then, because the Buckham Theater's been out there better part of 20 years now, isn't it?
Yeah. This was when I was in the 80s when I was a kid. Mono Breckenridge, he's from Sri Lanka. He was this black guy with like silver hair, so he had a silver goatee and long silver hair.
I think I seen him down there. I didn't know his name.
He did most of what was left of the Buckham Alley before he died, and then that's kind of when and then my Aunt Chris took over for a while before it kind of just died off. So
no, dude, that's at the Gerics side, or
yeah.
The Gerics are trying to create.
Well, her name is Chris Lambert, but she's my grandmother's daughter, which is Gerics. So.
The Hungarians.
Yeah.
The flaky artist. I'm saying that. I'm not the artist. I'm just flaky. But anyway.
Well, I know you want to transition. That brings me to
the videos.
Yeah, it brings me to something I wanted to mention because I am campaigning and my name's got to be out there a little bit, And I know a lot of people know the Gerics name for a variety of reasons, and I wanted to kind of illustrate a few of them real quick, if that's all right. Because my Uncle Dan.
Right.
He's the theater professor at Mott, and he's well known in the amateur theater communities, cloud casting crew, Flint Community Players.
Pretty talented, too.
Buckham Alley Theater, he's done lots of other performances in other places. My Uncle Bob, his older brother, Gerics, he's has been as involved and is an artist and a musician also. He's done apparently, I didn't know this, but I found out recently, years ago, he did the cruise ship circuit, where he'd play guitar and play with different bands and stuff. So you can imagine the kind of people that he got to see and meet on that circuit, But he's real talented, and he's made music with my uncle, and he's done performances and put on productions with my uncle, Daniel. So they're known. I mean, Mott kids that go to Mott now, that's the main theater teacher there, my Uncle Daniel. And then Bob, of course, and then Josh is the other well-known one. He's a tattoo artist for Electric Chair, but he's out of Bay City mostly.
Electric Chair, is that the one on
Well, there's
Dorp?
one in Clio, and then they have one, I don't know if they still have one on South Dort or not. I think they closed that one, but there's one in Clio, and everybody knows that one because of Ronnie Lash, who was my cousin's husband before he crashed his motorcycle and died. But he was kind of a popular guy. It says on the building, Ronnie Lash,
Yeah. My friend, I don't know if I would recognize, say his name out loud here, but my friend that's now deceased, that was his cousin.
Ronnie
Lash was, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah,
I grew up with the Lashes kind of because they dated my cousins. Rebecca was married to him before he died, but Josh, we always knew he'd do something because he was one of those artsy Hungarian kids the kid can draw. Even at the youngest age I can remember, he could draw like that one YouTube video, almost like a printer or whatever. He could. This kid was. I'm not exaggerating. He was talented with pencil and shading and paints and everything. He would just awesome work as a young kid. He's probably got tons of it laying somewhere that he probably put in, plastic slip files or something. But now he's a well-known tattoo artist for the Electric Chair, and he, I think, helps run or is one of the main tattoo artists in Bay City. He's also got art on some beer, Diablo beer. He did the art for on these cans or something. So people know the Gerics name for that. My dad was back in this, I guess in the 80s, he was a stripper. So he had his own like little strip group of women that he would hire out for like a singing telegram type of thing, or for bachelor parties or whatever. So I kind of got to grow up with some hot women as my dad's employees for a while. So he was well known for that. Plus he was a male stripper. He would do the Dear Widow seasons for several seasons, and he would hire out other guys to be on his crew to do male stripping. So a lot of women from back in the 70s, or I guess the 80s maybe up into the early 90s remember my father from that. they called him Gypsy, and then he became one of the main security guards at Central High School for like more than 10 years. I know that. And so like I've over the years ran across people that go, Gerics, was that your dad? He caught me smoking a joint, So the Gerics name's kind of out there. We're kind of a little bit of a thread too. People know who some of us are. I've always been considered the freak, I guess, because I don't really care about attention like some of them do. Like Daniel is all about attention. Of course, he's a thespian, so he's got that, look at me flavor going on. Bob, he's a good artist and good musician. He's not quite so bad like that, But Josh, he's a tattoo artist, and he's still, I don't even think he's 30 yet. He's got a lot of money, motorcycles, hot women. You know what I'm saying? But none of them really have a political edge, and they were always like hateful toward my grandfather because he was a drunk, but also mostly because he was a conservative, and they were coming out of that hippie generation. Daniel being the youngest, so he didn't see much of it. Maybe he's like mid-60s, early 70s, just because he's less than 10 years older than me. And I'm 46, going to be 47. So he's maybe 5-6 years older than me is all. So he's more in my range of generation than the rest of them. The rest of them came out of that hippie generation. But he still had that like mentality, and they all hated on my grandfather because he did work. He worked right here at Davison and Dort and one of the other plants. He was a pipe fitter also. It was his father that came here, and then he filed suit, started working for GM and became a pipe fitter also. But a lot of stuff that happened, he said, and they all hated on him for it. Like, remember what was that, I don't know who said the quote, that sucking sound that's going to be our jobs going to Mexico? My grandpa was going on about that stuff when I was a little kid.
Rossborough said that, yeah.
Long before that was ever said.
I voted for Rossborough, by the way.
Long before, but they hated on him for his, like, conservative attitudes on things like that. But the funny thing is as I've gotten older and learned about, life and what's been going on, it's so funny that the big, bad, conservative, drunk grandpa was actually right. Eat it, you guys. Eat your freaking words. Look at what's going on. You know what I'm saying? He was right. Stop worrying about people staring at you and criticizing what you're doing in theater and take a look at. But I've always been the black sheep because of that, because I've just been an activist because I thought it was fun. I didn't really care about any specific agenda or idea. other than, when you're working in something, you're all about that. You learn about it. You're serious about it. When I was an AIDS activist, we were well researched, and we knew what the hell we were doing, what we were talking about, what we wanted to do, what we wanted to see accomplished for people. I'll wrap it up with this because what bothers me about what's happened nowadays with HIV and all that stuff is that back when they discriminated against gays, and it was primarily a minority thing, and they wanted to call it gay-related immune deficiency, and Fauci, as much as he's lied about COVID-19, he lied about HIV too back then. It's a repeat of the same fucking bullshit, and he should actually be, I think he's a criminal. He should be thrown in jail. He's lied to us. He's got patents on the vaccines coming out. The guy's a piece of shit, But anyway, we forced the ACT UP, New York, San Francisco mostly, sometimes LA and Chicago, but mostly New York, Larry Kramer, and San Francisco chapter. Gedalia Braverman, Todd Kuyers, Brenda Leon, those people. What we did was we helped to speed up the drug approval process because, as people are witnessing, they've done the same thing now for this COVID thing that we forced or made them do back then for HIV drugs because people were dying. So they were willing to take whatever. Yeah, put me in a blind study. If it works, great, I'll live. I got 2 years left anyway. Who gives a shit, right? So speed this shit up. Get it out of animal trials. Put it in people. Let us try it. But what they did by doing that, when we changed how all that worked, now that's why we've seen for the last 20 years or so, all these drugs that come out with all these freaking side effects and shit because we sped the process up to try to help people. The industry used it to their benefit, and they don't give a fuck what happens to people. If, you know what I'm saying? Whereas drugs that could have taken 30 years to hit the market, we helped speed up the process so they come out within a few years, But again, this was to help people. They used it for their benefit. So anyway.
What you hear what Rupton Sinclair said one time after the book The Jungle came out and had such a dramatic impact where they changed the laws about packing, meat packing. And he was actually right in the book that outlining, basically pointing at how horrible the working conditions were for the workers in the plants, the packing plants. But he said, he quipped, he said, I aim for the hearts and I hit their stomachs. So it was unintended consequence. Something good definitely came out of it. But
same kind of thing.
Yeah,
totally.
Exactly. That's I see a parallel between that. So but I think that the interesting thing is that you're all over the place politically, and I think it's like when you just said, right. And I got to follow through it because I got a suggestion too. Well, I'll just send the links up when we do the description because we had such an interesting conversation. I don't know if we'd want to work that into because we're getting close to the 50-some minute mark, on the timetable here. But anyway, I'll put those links up with those videos
we can
you
talk
found
about
interesting.
Occupy later. I think that'd be great.
But I would like to ask because I had a friend. I have a friend that comes in. Her name's Laura Feder Bush. She's a woman who was actually, her family's solidly on the left, politically, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, pretty much the time they've been here in the country. They came from another country, like Germany or something, years ago. They're a Jewish family. Anyway, she came to the side of being a vehemently anti-abortion person and pro-life, even though she was raised in an era where her mom was a feminist, and that was considered basically a expectation to be able to have your reproduction rights, and she challenged that. And but I just write briefly, if you want to touch on that before we wrap it up, what caused you to have a change and become more on the side of anti-abortion or pro-life?
I think the fact that they've just gotten so extreme. I was just talking with my mom about this last night because my mom, she's one of those Christians that hasn't done a lot of research, but she's got the perspective like a lot of others. That it's just life and it shouldn't be tampered with or murdered or whatever. First off, I still believe, regardless of any of the rest of the argument, that the state should never have any right to tell you what to do with your body no matter what. Doesn't matter what it is. I firmly believe that. However, I think that only applies with pregnancy maybe within the first couple of days. Maybe a week or two at best. But this thing is developing as soon as it happens. Therefore, to me, it is life. And now that they've pushed it to the extreme to where they're chopping the body up, leaving babies out to die, all this up to full-term almost abortion, that's murder. And I don't understand how we can allow that, but we won't keep a pedophile in jail for the rest of his life or kill him or a serial killer. But we have no problem killing all these infants. No problem whatsoever. How is that not murder? I say abortion should only be allowed in those medical important times where maybe a woman was raped and she didn't want it, she didn't maybe know or whatever. That could have substantial psychological effects on somebody who wants to raise a rape baby. I get that. Stuff like that. Or if it's going to save the mother's life. Or like my mother said, sometimes they have to come out sooner than later, and it's a 50-50 chance of whether either one of them is going to live. There's certain medical situations I can see where, it might be necessary. However, if you're, like my mom said last night, if you're willing to spread your legs and life is created because of that, then you now have a responsibility. This is a living thing. You can't wait 3 or 4 or 6 months and then decide you want to murder something that's developed. It's there. Take Plan B, take the morning after pill, like immediately afterward. I think that should be like the only option. Otherwise, unless it's some kind of health situation, is that right wing? Is that like hateful toward women's rights? I think it's more compassionate toward this thing that never had a life to begin with or never even had a chance. But you took the irresponsibility of creating it. I think it's just too much of a responsibility to do and then just have that easy out. That's wrong.
See, the people now during this COVID thing, and I'm just using this illustration, they're saying, we follow the science. They are okay for the lockdowns, okay for the quarantines, all this stuff. But they don't follow the science when it comes to, children. I mean, infancy, or life. They try to say they act like that's not a human life.
Right.
It's definitely not going to turn into a bat. It's not going to turn into a cat. It's not going to turn into an elephant. Right. It's a human life developing in that womb. I don't think that's following the science. I think it's just political convenience and arrogance and indifference and coldness to say otherwise.
Well, not only that, but I mean, some of us believe, and I do believe, that it's also been a strategy by certain groups like Planned Parenthood. Again, here's the internet. What was the woman's name?
Margaret Sanger?
Margaret Sanger?
Margaret Sanger, yeah.
Okay, yeah, Sanger. Wasn't she quoted as saying, we need to remove the black people like they're weeds or something like that? I mean, her whole purpose was based on this idea of compassion and taking care of you.
Right.
But her real goal and agenda was to reduce the population. This is sick. That is the left.
That's racist.
Right.
They're very racist.
And I think maybe I enlightened you on the one thing about progressive versus liberal. That was what a liberal was back then. Progressive. Right. They like to paint themselves like there's something good and compassionate for you, but in the reality is they have this, agenda on the backside that they don't want you to know about. I think that's why it's making it so much harder, and that's why it's become so much more in your face now with this Antifa and BLM stuff, because they can't hide it. So they're just gonna look the other way, but it's there. We know it. We know you support them. They're not peaceful protesters. You know what I'm saying? Right. So, but if this is a good segue to that, the first video, just because I want people to see
which
Tatum.
Which first one do you want?
The long one. We'll just give them a few maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes.
And I'll put the link up. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The Officer Tatum or whatever. Like I said, I've been isolated for a while, so I haven't been really paying attention to a lot of stuff. So I kind of went back through my videos and subscriptions and was watching some Ben, watching some him, watching some Turks, watching all these different groups. I fucking hate the Turks. They piss me off. But anyway, this is the Officer Tatum. We were talking before about with my campaign and how I would deal with the defund the police thing, and I kind of feel like there should be a defunding, but not without some other strategy going on, or whatever, because I'm an anarchist, but there has to be some kind of order and rules. I know it's funny, but anyway, he's a black man, used to be on the SWAT team. I don't remember where. If you go to his link, go to his videos, and look at his about page, you'll get more detail. But bottom line is he was a SWAT guy for 6 years.
Right.
Big buff black guy. And which one is that? That's the
Officer Tatum. It's called how is this not a hate crime? A hate crime.
What's the longer one?
That one is BLM inspires black man to kill white people. But that's a 15-minute one.
Oh yeah, no, that's a different guy. Yeah. I wanted to point this out because one, this goes a lot to that whole thought crime thing when it comes to hate crime. Because assault is assault. We don't need another goddamn law to stack on top of it. If you assault somebody, you've assaulted somebody. I get where Tatum's coming from because of what's going on with BLM and all this only Black Lives thing. But the fact of the matter is we don't need any extra. We didn't need any extra laws when we wrote the hate crime crap. We already had them. They just were not enforced. You cannot assault somebody. Why does it have to have anything attached to it about whether or not you hated them or the language that you used? The bottom line is you punched them, you stabbed them, you shot them. It doesn't matter if you thought they were a nigger or a kike or a faggot or whatever the hell it is you want to think they are. Why is that so relevant? It's not. That's a thought thing. You see what I'm saying? Violence is violence. That's it. And that's what the laws are there for, to enforce and protect people with. So anyway, I want to bring that point up, but also because he is an ex-cop, and I think it's very interesting with what's going on, the perspectives that he has, because it illustrates that it's not just this narrative that everybody's being forced to swallow, this so-called progressive liberal narrative. And part of the reason why I wanted to bring it up is because you heard about that guy was doing 60 years for weed, the Flint guy that they're letting out now.
I did hear about that.
I forget his name, but that's something our beloved prosecutor Layton is typical of Democrats. Look at how compassionate I can be. Well, I mean, it's almost 60 years, and the guy's been in there for quite a while, and you're just now talking about it. I mean, how long have you been prosecutor? Isn't this something Art Bush could have tackled too? I mean, you just care so much about us,
right.
But this guy spent a good part of his life in prison, and now it's important.
So we'll play this.
That's a campaign ploy.
Right.
It's a game. That's a strongman tactic. We know you don't give a shit. You know what I'm saying? So quit pretending like you do.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll let this play, and we'll use this point to end this conversation. And next week, I'll play this out. I'll also provide links for the other two as well as the one we're playing. So thanks again for coming in.
We gotta do that 48-second one.
Oh, the 48-second one then?
Real quick. No, after this, if that's okay.
Well, we're going well over an hour though. That's a problem. I want to put this up on Comcast. So.
Oh. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So all right. So I'll see you, and thanks again. And we'll play this, and that'll be our way out. All right.
Excellent. Okay.
How is this not a hate crime? This video is brought to you by The Outstated Store. The Outstated Store. Get the merch link in the description section. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you get notifications anytime I go live or make a video. Make sure you still subscribe to my channel, like this video, comment on this video, share this video. Let's get into this. So, do y'all remember that black kid with his pants sagging, looking like a hoodlum in Macy's, beating up the white man with the mask on? Do y'all remember that? Do y'all remember that? I mean, some of y'all probably don't because they don't play it on the news a lot. But I remember it vividly. They lied and claimed that this white man used the N-word against this brother in Macy's, and he was just whooping him down, beating him up, punching him in the face, calling him the N-word, all kind of stuff the black kid was doing to this guy. Beating him down. The dude on the ground apologizing. Please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. Stop. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. They ran this whole story that it was an N-word. Come to find out, and this is old news, but the rest isn't. Come to find out, there was no N-word. He literally randomly walked up to this white man in Macy's and started pummeling him, beating him down, calling him racial slurs like the N-word. I don't understand how black people can call each other the N-word or call other people the N-word in malice, and it's not considered hateful. It's just another word. But let a white man call a black man that word in song or in playfulness or as antagonistic and not malicious. Oh, you going to hell. They're gonna take you and put you in hell. You ain't gonna go to jail. You're not gonna get kicked. They're gonna take you straight to hell. How is that possible? More information about this. They finally arrested the guy. They obviously charged him. Thank God. But tell me this, riddle me this. Why didn't they charge him with a hate crime? And why didn't they charge his friend that was right along with him video recording as an accomplice to a hate crime? But in the case of Ahmaud Arbery, they arrested the guy, charged him with accessory to a murder. He was videotaping the attempted citizen's arrest of Ahmaud Arbery. He was just videotaping. He getting charged with murder. And this kid intentionally walked up to a random white man, beat him down while his brother video recorded. Now, to put two and two together, he didn't just, my brother fighting somebody. Let me just start the camera. Then he would have gotten the camera way later than that. He was recording when the first punches were thrown. How? How did he know to record? How is he recording? How are they doing this? He didn't render aid. He didn't try to stop his brother. He didn't try to do nothing. And that's okay? Oh, okay. Okay, they black. I was just wondering. I just wanted to make sure, because they're black, they don't have to be held to the same standards as white people in America. If a white man just randomly start beating on a black man and calling him outside of his name, other slurs, what if he called him an Uncle Tom? Beat the man down, call him Uncle Tom Coon. Man, they'd be charged with a hate crime. You paint over Black Lives Matter on the streets that you pay taxes on. You paint over Black Lives Matter and you get charged with a hate crime. But if you black and you actually conduct a hate crime against somebody, it's just a simple assault. It's a simple assault, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing to see here. This is crazy to me. It's out of control. I'm not advocating for any one race to be treated any better or worse than the next. But my God, can we be equal? And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that this is not equal. This is not equality. This is not Black Lives Matter. It's none of that. This is revenge. This is revenge on the white man for the sins of some of your ancestors. Some of y'all, these people that did slavery in America ain't even your ancestors. Your ancestors migrated here after slavery. But somehow, because of the color of your skin, you have now been lumped into the worst of other organizations, not organizations, but people with the same color of skin. Now imagine if they did that to black people. You know all these black people that have committed crimes in this country? Half of the murders in this country, half of all violent crimes in this country. Oh, you want to say what your ancestors did? No, I'm not talking about 1,000 years ago. I'm talking about 20 years ago. I'm talking about 10 years ago. I'm talking about in the immediate past, the damage and demise that other black people have done to the black community. You're talking about politicians. You're talking about athletes. You're talking about all these other people that have done a poor job at managing and doing what's right for the community. Now, there are some black people, obviously, that do a good job in their communities, but there's a lot of them that ain't doing what they're supposed to do. That's facilitating crime, hatred, and destruction. Won't you get reparations from that person? How about you complain about that person's ancestry? Actually, you could probably see the man who actually killed your family member today. He's alive. Probably ain't even in jail. And if he's in jail, you can identify the person who destroyed your family in the flesh. But you're not mad at that, though. You got a tangible person that you can see and that you saw evidence of them doing something and harming your family. You don't want to be mad at that. But you're mad at a white man who didn't know the white man that you didn't know, that enslaved the ancestor that probably ain't even your ancestor, and you never know him, never met him, never seen him. You mad at that, but you won't be mad at the modern past, at the near past. I know I'm saying this word wrong, but you know what I'm saying. You're not gonna worry about that, and you expect people to take you seriously. It's out of control, out of control. Black privilege, a black privilege all day. If you black, you can say whatever you want to say. You can be as rude as you want to be. They ain't gonna fire you. They may not like you, but they ain't gonna fire you. Oh, you be white and you tell the truth. You can quote a fact. You can quote a scripture. And in 2020, you can be white and quote a scripture from Jesus Christ, and you will have Christians turning on you. You will have Christians calling you racist. You will have Christians calling you out your name, boycotting against you. The church that we go to here in Phoenix, and I'm done after this. The church that we go to here in Phoenix, they allowed the president of the United States to use their facility to do his rally. Nothing wrong with that. You can rent out your facility. These people rent out their facilities to all kind of stuff. This church rented out their facility, and other churches want to protest them. Oh, that's not right. What? Well, you know you ain't got no Holy Ghost in you. You ain't got, these churches ain't full of crap. And I could talk about that for another hour. But I want you to watch the rest of my videos. Visit the Austin Tatum store where you get your cool shirts, cool merch. Y'all know what it is. I'll see you on the next one. I'm out.